Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping straight into a topic that touches pretty much everyone. The move from primary to secondary school. Think back around age 11 in the UK. It's this whirlwind of change, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Suddenly you're navigating a huge new building, trying to figure out where you fit in with a bunch of new faces, and the schoolwork definitely gets, well, more serious.
It's so much more than just changing buildings. What we're really starting to understand is the emotional roller coaster this can be for
The
kids.
roller coaster,
They're
yeah.
juggling new friendships, figuring out how to relate to different teachers, and even their own sense of who they are shifts in this bigger environment. Plus, the academic jump can feel enormous. It's a lot for young minds to process.
Absolutely. And there's a growing spotlight, isn't there, on how kids cope emotionally during this big step. Schools are increasingly seen as key players in supporting their emotional well-being.
Definitely. There's a lot more focus there now.
So our mission today is to really dig into what emotional well-being actually means, specifically when we're talking about this primary to secondary school switch.
Right. Getting specific.
We've got our hands on a fascinating new paper that just dropped in the Educational Psychology Review on March 8th, 2025. It's a concept analysis, which basically means they've taken a deep look at how we even talk about this stuff.
And what makes this paper so interesting, I think, is that it's not just one person's opinion. The researchers pulled together a massive international review of existing studies, a survey that reached across the UK.
Uh-huh.
And crucially, they talked directly to the people involved: researchers, teachers, policymakers, and most importantly, the children themselves.
Wow, that's comprehensive.
It really is. That's a really robust way to get a handle on this.
Okay, let's dive in then. One of the first surprising things the paper points out is that when we talk about primary secondary school transitions and emotional well-being, the way researchers define these things is often, well, a bit of a mess.
Yeah, mess is a good word for it.
It's like we all think we know what we're talking about, but when you try to nail it down, the picture gets really blurry.
That's a crucial stumbling block, isn't it? The paper highlights a study that looked back at 10 years of research from 2008 to 2018.
A whole decade.
Yeah. And it found that most of the studies on school transitions didn't even bother to clearly say what they meant by transitions in the first place.
Really, they just didn't define it.
It was just kind of assumed everyone knew.
You'd think that would be the absolute starting point. It's like trying to follow a recipe where they just say mix it without telling you what it is.
Exactly. And it's not just the researchers either. Another study from 2019 found that even teachers and other education professionals often didn't have a shared understanding of what transition really meant.
So even the people on the ground.
Yeah, for many, it was just a basic change or move. Without a clear definition, it's really hard to compare what different studies are finding or, to build a solid understanding.
It's like trying to compare apples and oranges, except everyone's got their own idea of what counts as an apple. Or even if it's fruit at all.
Precisely. And here's another thing to consider. The research we do have on these transitions tends to focus on the negative.
Oh, interesting. How so?
This paper points out that a whopping 63% of studies frame the transition in a negative light.
63%. That's high.
It is. And that raises a real question. Could all this focus on potential problems actually be making kids more anxious about the move before they even get there?
Right. Our expectations can really shape our experiences, can't they?
Definitely.
That totally rings true. If all you hear are horror stories, you're bound to be on edge. So what about emotional well-being itself? Is that any clearer of a picture?
Not really, no. The paper actually calls it a nebulous concept
Nebulous, okay.
because the topic that gets studied in so many different fields, psychology, education, sociology, you name it, there's a real lack of consistency in how it's defined and how it's measured.
So different fields mean different definitions.
Exactly. And the way researchers think about it, in theory, doesn't always match up with how they actually study it in practice.
So everyone's got their own take on what it means to be doing well emotionally. Leads to confusion, I bet.
It does. The paper touches on some common ideas about emotional well-being in young people, like having positive feelings, a healthy sense of self-worth, and being able to bounce back from difficulties, what we often call resilience.
Resilience. Common term.
But it notes that these definitions often don't really get into some deeper aspects of well-being. Think about the difference between just feeling good day to day, which researchers sometimes call hedonia.
Hedonia. Like hedonism.
Sort of, yeah, related to pleasure and positive feelings. And then there's having a real sense of purpose and fulfillment in what you're doing, which they call eudaimonia.
Hedonia and eudaimonia. Okay, those sound like something you'd come across in a philosophy class.
They do. And they're important concepts in understanding well-being. There's even an ongoing debate among researchers about whether these are two totally separate things or just different shades of the same overall feeling of well-being.
Ah, so are they distinct or linked?
Well, this paper mentions a study from just last year, 2024, that actually found surprisingly little difference between the two when they tried to measure them separately. It suggests that they might be more connected than we thought.
Interesting.
The researchers argue we need to think more deeply about what these terms really mean in practice.
So it's not just about whether you had a good day or not. There's more depth.
Definitely not. And this is key.
Mm.
Emotional well-being isn't just the absence of feeling down or having a mental health problem. It's much broader than that.
Right. It's not just not bad.
Exactly. The paper refers to the work of a researcher named Reif, who back in 2013 described emotional well-being as having several parts. There's the emotional side, obviously our feelings.
Yeah.
That's the affective dimension.
Okay, feelings.
But there's also a thinking side, having a sense of meaning and purpose in life. That's the cognitive dimension.
Meaning and purpose. Got it.
And then there's the doing or functioning side, feeling like you have autonomy, you're competent, you've got good relationships.
So it's about feeling good, feeling like your life has some direction, and feeling capable and connected. That paints a much fuller picture.
It really does.
Okay, so we've established that transitions and emotional well-being are a bit fuzzy on their own. What happens when you try to look at them together, specifically in this school context?
And here's where things get really interesting and where the paper makes a crucial point. It says that most existing definitions of emotional well-being completely ignore the context of these primary-secondary school transitions.
They ignore the context. How?
They tend to look at a child's general emotional state, maybe before and after the move, but they don't really consider the specific, unique emotions that might pop up because of this huge change in their lives.
That seems like a massive blind spot. If you're studying the effect of X, shouldn't you look at X?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
It really is. The paper shares a really insightful finding from some initial research they did. They asked Year 7 kids who had just made the move.
Okay, kids right in the middle of it.
Exactly. They asked what emotional well-being meant to them in this context, and they said it was about feelings which we've not had to understand before.
Wow. Feelings we've not had to understand before. That's so telling.
Isn't it? It really captures that sense of being in uncharted territory emotionally. Brand new emotions triggered by these completely new experiences. It highlights how the specific situation shapes their emotional world.
That makes so much sense. Things they just haven't encountered.
Exactly. And the paper also points to another study from 2023, this one's by Bagnall and Jindal-Snape, which found that there aren't really any good tools out there. Questionnaires, measures that specifically assess emotional well-being during these school transitions.
No specific tools. So what do researchers use?
Well, they tend to use separate questionnaires, maybe one about how the transition is going generally, asking about practical things, and then another separate one about their overall emotional state, like anxiety or happiness.
So they're measuring two different things and hoping to see a connection, like correlating weather reports with gardening success.
Kind of, yeah. But the authors of this new paper argue that this separate approach just isn't good enough. A dip in a child's overall emotional well-being might not be directly because of the school transition itself.
Right. Could be something else entirely. Family stuff, other life changes.
Exactly. It could be related to all sorts of other things happening in their lives. Unless we focus specifically on the emotional experience of the transition, we can't really understand its unique impact.
It's like trying to figure out why your plant is wilting by only checking the soil temperature. You might miss the fact that it's not getting enough light, or maybe it has pests.
That's a perfect analogy. The paper really emphasizes that to truly understand emotional well-being during this specific transition, we need to actively involve everyone who's part of it.
The stakeholders.
Yes, and that absolutely includes listening carefully to the children themselves. Their perspectives are key to really understanding what this experience means for their emotional lives. We can't just guess.
Okay, so the current ways of understanding this are falling short. This new paper aims to give us a better framework. How do they actually define emotional well-being in the context of moving from primary to secondary school?
Right, so they use a well-regarded method called the Walker and Avant method for concept analysis. It's quite a structured way to really break down an idea and define it clearly.
Okay.
And based on all the information they gather, the research reviews, the surveys, and those crucial conversations with kids and educators, They identified three key things, three defining attributes that make up emotional well-being during this transition.
3 key attributes. Lay them on us. What are the essential components?
Okay, the first is affective experience. Think of this as the child's immediate feelings, both the good and the bad, the positive and negative, as they are actually going through the transition right now.
In the moment.
Yes, in the moment. It's not just about how they felt before they moved or how they feel months later when they've maybe settled in, but what they're experiencing emotionally in the midst of all the changes, like that anxiety walking into a huge new building or the excitement of making a new friend.
So it's capturing that real-time emotional response.
Hmm.
Got it. What's the second piece?
The second is evaluations of emotional functioning. This one has a couple of layers. First, it's about how the child perceives their overall emotional well-being generally. How am I doing overall?
Okay, the big picture.
But crucially, it also looks at how they feel they're doing, how they evaluate their well-being in specific areas that are directly affected by the transition.
Like specific domains.
Exactly. Things like their social well-being, making friends, fitting in,
Yeah.
their academic well-being, keeping up with the harder schoolwork, their environmental well-being, feeling comfortable and safe in the new school building and routines, and their personal well-being, their sense of identity, their confidence in this new setting.
Right, because the transition hits all those areas differently.
Precisely. This connects with this idea that moving schools isn't just one big event, but a whole series of interconnected changes happening at once. The multiple and multidimensional transitions theory they mentioned.
So it's not just, am I feeling okay,
Yeah.
but digging deeper. Am I fitting in socially? Can I handle the tougher lessons? Do I feel safe and comfortable in this new place? How am I doing as a person here?
Exactly. It's a much more detailed picture of their functioning. And the third key attribute is perceptions of resources.
Resources, like what they have to help them cope.
Yes. This looks at how the children view their own ability to cope, their internal resources like resilience, coping strategies, problem-solving skills. Do they believe they can handle the challenges?
Okay, their inner strengths.
And it also includes their perception of the external resources available, the support they feel they have around them, from family, friends, teachers. Do they feel like people have their back? It's about whether they feel like they have what it takes, both inside and out, to manage the transition and stay emotionally balanced.
So let me recap. It's about their feelings in the moment, how they think they're doing across different specific parts of the transition experience, and whether they believe they have the inner strength and external help they need.
You've got it. That's the core of their new definition.
That sounds like a really complete way to look at it, much more nuanced.
It is. And to really illustrate these ideas, the paper gives us two fictional examples, like case studies. First, there's James, who represents a child with positive emotional well-being during the move.
Okay, tell us about Jones's experience. How does he fit those attributes?
So Joe started thinking about secondary school way back in year 5, even though he'd heard some of the usual, maybe slightly scary stories.
Yeah, the playground rumors.
Exactly. He was pretty confident that he and his main group of friends would stick together. He knew the work would be harder, but he saw that as just a normal part of growing up, a positive challenge.
So a positive outlook beforehand.
Yes. Towards the end of primary school, he felt, a little bit nervous, which is normal, but mostly he was excited and positive about the change.
So his affective experience was largely positive.
Right. And now, almost a year into year 7, while the size of the school is a bit overwhelming at first, it doesn't bother him much anymore. That's his environmental adjustment. He feels like his family supports him, that's perceived external resources. He's made new friends alongside his old one's social functioning. He's doing well in his classes, academic functioning, and generally feels happy and relaxed at secondary school. Overall, positive affect and evaluation.
Okay, so he hits all those points. Positive feelings in the moment, good evaluations across the different areas, and feeling supported and capable perceiving those resources.
Exactly. He really exemplifies that positive side.
He sounds like he's really taken it in his stride. Now, what about the other end of the spectrum? Tell us about the contrary case.
That's Thomas. He's also in year 7, but his experience is very different. He comes from a less privileged background and often goes to school hungry, which obviously makes it hard for him to focus.
Tough starting point.
Definitely. He struggled academically even in primary school. He lives with his mom, who has her own significant health challenges, so he often keeps his worries to himself, perhaps not wanting to burden her. That relates to perceived support or lack thereof.
Right, limited perceived resources there.
In year 6, he was really anxious about secondary school and couldn't see anything good about it at all. He felt safe and familiar in primary school and just dreaded the change.
So negative anticipation, negative affect from the start.
Yes. Now, his teachers say he hasn't settled in well. He's quite isolated socially, gets picked on sometimes, and his one close friend actually went to a different secondary school.
Oh, that's tough. Social functioning really hit.
Very tough. Thomas is finding it hard to keep up with the schoolwork, often doesn't do his homework, so academic functioning is low. And his teachers report he's frequently upset and stressed at school.
Negative affect dominating.
Absolutely. He's become increasingly negative about school in general and is missing more and more days. So for Thomas, we see negative emotions, poor evaluations of his functioning socially and academically, and a clear perception of lacking both internal coping skills and external support.
Those two examples really bring to life the different ways this transition can play out for kids and how central their emotional well-being to find in this richer way is to that experience. It's not just one thing.
Not at all.
Now, the paper also discusses what comes before and after the transition in relation to emotional well-being. Let's start with what comes before the antecedents. What factors already present before the move can influence how a child feels emotionally during it?
Right, the antecedents, things that set the stage. The research points to several important factors that come into play before the transition even happens. One is having a generally stable, affective state, basically, not being constantly at extreme highs or lows emotionally.
So a degree of emotional regulation already.
Kind of, yeah. It doesn't mean they won't feel nervous or excited, but those feelings don't tend to become overwhelming or incapacitating. Another key factor is self-efficacy, their belief in their own ability to handle new challenges.
Their confidence in themselves.
Exactly. Having positive attitudes towards their primary school and feeling a sense of connection or belonging there also seems to help pave the way.
Interesting. So liking primary school helps with leaving it.
It seems counterintuitive, maybe, but perhaps that positive experience builds confidence and social skills they can take with them. And perhaps, obviously, viewing the transition to secondary school itself as a positive step, or at least a normal one, rather than something to be dreaded.
That makes perfect sense. If you're already feeling anxious and negative about it beforehand, that's likely to color the experience itself.
Absolutely. The paper also highlights the importance of a child's individual characteristics, like their personality. Also, how effective the transition activities organized by the schools are, like taster days or visits.
So what the schools do matters.
Definitely. And also, whether there's positive communication about secondary school from teachers, family, and especially their friends. And related to that, the level of social support they perceive having, particularly from family and peers.
Peer support seems huge at that age.
It really is. The kids in the focus groups for this research really emphasized how much their friends' experiences and opinions mattered to them before the move.
So it's a combination of the child's own inner world, their emotional stability, their self-belief, how they perceive the upcoming change, and the network of support and communication around them.
That sums it up well. Those are the key things present before that seem to influence well-being during.
Now, what about the consequences? What are the outcomes that are linked to a child's emotional well-being during this transition period?
The paper looks at both the immediate short-term effects and touches on some of the potential longer-term consequences. In the short term, how a child is doing emotionally during the transition can significantly affect, well, things you might expect.
Like what?
How well they do academically, their grades, their engagement with learning, how easily they connect with new people and make friends, their social interactions, and their overall behavior in school, things like following rules, attendance.
So if a child is struggling emotionally with the move, it can create a real knock-on effect in other important areas of their school life almost immediately.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected. And while the paper's main focus wasn't on long-term outcomes, it does acknowledge and point to a lot of other research in this area.
What does that wider research suggest?
It suggests that those short-term difficulties, lower grades, behavioral issues, feeling disconnected from school, social isolation if they persist, they have been linked to more serious problems down the line.
Such as?
Things like longer-term mental health challenges, fewer positive educational outcomes later on, reduced employment opportunities, and even contributing to wider social inequalities.
Wow. So making sure this transition goes well emotionally isn't just about getting through year 7. It can have really significant implications that stretch far beyond those first few months in secondary school.
That's the argument, yes.
Yeah.
Supporting well-being during this specific period could be quite pivotal.
Now, this leads to a practical question. How do we actually know if a child is having a positive or negative emotional experience during this transition using this new, more detailed definition? The paper mentions empirical reference. What exactly are those?
Right, empirical reference. It's research jargon, basically, for the ways we can actually measure or observe a concept. They're the things we can see, ask about, or quantify that give us evidence of whether that concept, in this case, contextualized emotional well-being, is present and to what degree.
So, the signs or indicators we can look for.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, the paper points out that we don't really have good ways, good empirical reference or measures, specifically for emotional well-being in the context of these primary-secondary transitions right now.
Right, we're back to that gap in the tools we have to understand this properly. The old measures are too general or separate.
Correct.
Right.
But the paper does talk about how there are three key defining attributes that affective experience, evaluations of functioning, and perceptions of resources could be assessed in a more focused, contextualized way.
Okay, how would that look in practice?
Well, for capturing that affective experience, the in-the-moment feelings, we need to design questions or methods that focus on what they're experiencing now during the transition period, rather than just asking them to think back weeks or months ago, or about general feelings unrelated to school.
So, really trying to tap into their current emotional state as it relates to the transition.
Yes. For understanding their evaluations of emotional functioning, we need to ask questions that cover both their overall sense of well-being and specifically how they feel they're managing in those different domains. We talked about social, academic, environmental, personal within the secondary school context.
Making the questions directly relevant to the actual changes and challenges they're navigating. Not just, are you happy, but how are you finding making friends here? Or how are you coping with the homework load?
Precisely. It needs to be specific to the transition experience. And when it comes to their perceptions of resources, we need to ask children directly about how confident they feel in their own coping abilities for dealing with transition challenges, and how much support they feel they have from family, friends, and school staff in relation to this move.
Again, connecting it back to the transition itself. So it's about designing ways to ask kids about their specific emotional experiences, functioning, and resources related to this move, rather than just using generic measures of well-being or coping.
Exactly. And the researchers behind this paper are actually taking this a step further. They mentioned that they're currently developing a specific tool based on this concept analysis.
Oh, really? What's it called?
It's called the Primary Secondary School Transitions Emotional Wellbeing Scale, or PS-WELLS for short.
P.S. Wells. Okay.
And this scale is being designed specifically to address the limitations we've talked about. It aims to look at how children's emotional well-being, defined in this contextual way, changes over time during the transition period. And it directly assesses those three key defining attributes: affect, functioning evaluations, and resource perceptions, all related to the transition context.
That sounds like a really valuable development, a tool designed for the job, finally.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
It aims to be longitudinal and context-specific.
So ultimately, why does all of this detailed understanding matter? Why is it so important to really get to grips with emotional well-being in this specific context, maybe using tools like the PS Wells in future?
Well, a clearer, more accurate understanding has huge potential benefits across the board. For researchers, it means they can conduct more focused and, frankly, more meaningful studies into how these transitions really impact children's emotional lives.
Better research questions, better data.
Yes, it can help them more accurately identify which children might be most vulnerable or at risk of struggling during the transition. And that, in turn, helps in developing more effective, targeted ways to support them. By moving beyond just general ideas of well-being and focusing on the unique emotional challenges and experiences tied to the transition itself, we can gain much more valuable insights.
So it's about being more precise in our research and really understanding the specific hurdles kids face during this particular, often difficult time in their lives.
Exactly. And that precision carries over into practice. For schools and policymakers, this research, this clearer conceptualization, can directly inform the development of better interventions and support programs.
How so?
It can help refine the transition activities that schools already run, making them more focused on emotional aspects. It can provide a framework for identifying children who might need extra help earlier on, maybe even before the move, so they can receive targeted support.
Proactive rather than reactive.
Ideally, yes. And the paper really emphasizes again how crucial it is to take children's own views and perspectives into account when creating these measures and support systems.
Mhm.
We need to make sure they're actually relevant and helpful to the kids themselves.
That's so vital, isn't it? It's about truly listening to the children's experiences and building support based on what they actually say they need, not just what adults think they need.
Absolutely. That came through strongly from their engagement with children. The paper also briefly mentions the potential value of regularly checking in on students' emotional well-being during these key transition years, maybe termly.
Like ongoing monitoring.
Yes. Using a context-specific measure could give educators really valuable, timely insights into how their students are coping collectively and individually, allowing them to adjust support or intervene more quickly if needed.
So, a more detailed understanding can lead to better research, which leads to better support in schools, informed by kids' own voices, and ultimately better outcomes for the young people going through this significant change.
That's the core of it. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive. Thank you. To bring it all together, it seems that emotional well-being during that move from primary to secondary school isn't just about a general sense of happiness or not having problems. It's really a distinct and complex experience.
Very much so.
It's shaped by how children feel right now in the moment as they navigate a whole set of specific changes, social, academic, environmental. And it's also about how they see their own ability and the support around them to handle it all.
Precisely. Those three elements together,
Yeah.
the immediate feelings, the evaluation of how they're functioning in different areas, and their view of their resources, that's what defines it in this context.
And getting a clearer picture of this is so important for making sure we provide the right kind of support during this really crucial time in a child's development.
Absolutely vital.
So for you listening, as you reflect on your own experiences of moving to secondary school, or perhaps the experiences of children you know, how do those new feelings the children described and that need to adapt, how does that resonate with what we've discussed today? What specific parts of that transition do you think had or have the biggest impact on a child's emotional state? Was it the friendships, the bigger building, the harder work? It really makes you think about the complex interplay between the individual child, the school environment, and the support network around them, doesn't it?
It really does. It's never just one thing.
This deep dive offers a starting point based on this new analysis. We definitely encourage you to explore the research in educational psychology further if you're keen to learn more about this key developmental stage. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.